Yo peeps, it's Tripl-L and now it is time to talk Little Witch Academia. So this video is going to be a tad different. It is going to be a bit of a discussion regarding one of the concepts happening in Little Witch Academia. It is going to be using episode 13 as the basis for the majority of the discussion. Ultimately, I'm going to be arguing a point and I'm going to be trying to convince you guys why this point is valid for this particular series. So it's not really going to be much of a review of episode 13, but rather specifically aiming at one particular concept that's popping up in that episode and then talking about it. Now before I continue, I just want to have a small little moment to call out one of the commenters on the last video, episode 12 review. Gico, I read through your predictions, I read through everything, and I read through your thoughts on that last episode. I'm really happy that someone agreed in the idea of the way that the school treats Akko is unfair, and also your predictions, like some of them were pretty close. It's just you had to switch out certain characters for some of them to work. But hey, thanks for always commenting so much. It is a pleasure to read. I just don't always have the time to respond appropriately, so I hope you can forgive me for that regard. Anyway, let's get into this video and ultimately what it's going to be about, because if I've most likely made the title something like the witches are the antagonist in Little Witch Academia, and now I'm going to defend that point. I am willing to defend this point till the last day that this series is running. First off, let's get the technicality out of the way. Is it possible for a society or something that isn't a person to be an antagonist in a story? Well, yeah, I would argue so. The antagonist is particularly the role that is counter to the protagonist. It's the one that gives the protagonist trouble. And when you look at this series and you look at Akko, who is she constantly trying to deal with? Who is she constantly like falling down in front of? Who is she constantly what is she constantly trying to overcome? Ultimately, it's the rules that are established by the society in which she lives, which just happens to be the Witch Society. The Witch Society just doesn't work for Akko, okay? And that's the fundamental fact of it. The things that she's winning out against, and the moment she's had her victories, it's revolving around the things that the Witch Society is doing as a norm. For instance, we had the episode with Akko turning into a fish and then ultimately winning out and saving some fish that were endangered. Yeah, they were endangered fish or something. They were part of a reserve. I don't recall. And then she was chastised for that from the Witch Society, but she ultimately won out because it was the moral victory. It was the right thing to do. Akko's other struggles, usually with just the way that witches do things, she's constantly struggling against the culture that the witch have established in that particular academy, and that is one of the struggles that Akko has to deal with. Ultimately, it's the way that this society is structured that is messing with Akko's progression. And it's ultimately that which she is always trying to overcome. It's ultimately stemming from the way that the witches do things. Now, a few things happen in episode 13 that kind of lead into this problem, but speak of the problem that Witch Society, as we now find out, has as a whole. And so that's also going to be what we're going to expand into as I jump from this point of Witch Society is antagonistic towards this is why it can be seen as antagonistic. So now before we get into that, let's just quickly remind ourselves what it has done so far. The witches decided that it's a good idea to put kids up to be sacrifices for a giant monster. Now we know that technically the girls are not in danger, but we have seen how the bullying progresses in episode 13. We know that this is not the best role to be in. We know that they're being laughed at. We know that they're not being put in a really nice social situation. Unfortunate, but again, this is tradition, so people are going to adhere to tradition. Now, depending on what kind of schooling you had, you may really think, yeah, you know, whatever, they're not getting hurt, it's not a big deal, and that's fair, that's fair. But that's just one of the premises for this episode. Now, in this episode, we see the full play out of that whole ghost eating sequence, the sacrifice sequence. The girls and Akko pull off something that is worth merit. It's absolutely worth merit, and we will talk about that a little bit towards the end of the video. But in this episode, we get three witches who we are told are relatively important in the witching world. Three witches who we can assume are authorities within the world of witches. One of these witches makes a really interesting statement when she's talking about the decline of magic. And what she generally says is that no wonder magic is in decline, because you put someone like her name, Halbrook. You put someone like her in charge of this school. No wonder the magic world is in decline, or magic is in decline. Now, when you have that moment occurring, this person who the viewers have been told is an authority figure, she's an authority, that she is a special guest at this big festival, is saying this statement. And this statement would make you think, oh, okay, so the staff at the academy and the headmistress, they are the problem. They are specifically the problem. And this makes you want to believe, oh, okay, so maybe this is an isolated incident. Maybe the staff are just too set in their ways and they are the ones causing a problem. We've seen that the staff have their faults. But then something really weird happens in the episode. Specifically, we see the way that the headmistress does things. And so here's a nice little infographic of just showing the logical train of thoughts that are occurring in this episode, right? The first one is those three witches who are in power make a statement that Luna Nova plus the headmistress, and by extension the current staff, equals decline in magic and just general boredom when it comes to magic. Nothing really innovative going on. Alright, that's what she premises when she says that statement. But the episode says something else, because we see exactly what that headmistress does and her way of doing things. When Akko and the girls start going in there and they're going against tradition, the headmistress is the one who is calling down the other two teachers who are way more dogmatic, and one of who has caused bigger problems for Akko before, or has attempted to cause bigger problems for Akko before. The episode tells us, and we see it through the way that the episode moves, that ultimately the way that the headmistress is handling the situation at Luna Nova is the right way, because that way of handling it is attributed to the victory that Akko receives at the end of the episode, when she is able to actually help the ghost and just stop it from being sad altogether. So what's going on here? One person who is the authority in that world is saying that this person is the cause of this decline, or this just general boredom. She attributed like all the negative aspects of that festival to the headmistress. But the viewers see the headmistress is the beacon of hope for the characters, because she's the one that's willing to look past the tradition while also just having the traditions around. She's a much more moderate character. When you look at this, ultimately what the episode is telling us is the correct answer, because that's how the narrative is folding out. So what ends up happening here is that that witch, who is an authority figure in that world, is wrong. Fundamentally wrong, because we see the proof in the episode. Now what you end up having here is an authority figure who is flat out shit talking. All she's doing is spewing shit, because it's fundamentally wrong, and the episode proves against her. Her comments about the decline in magic and her comments about what Luna Nova is doing and all of that are proven wrong by the episode's narrative, and then it leads us to the conclusion that this lady has no idea what's actually responsible for the decline in magic. And let's face it, the witch world is more than just Luna Nova, and mind you, Luna Nova is just odd in how much history it contains within its halls. And yeah, good enough reason to think that this place would be the cause of it, because man, Luna Nova has an answer for everything. But because we know this lady is wrong, we can pretty much say that she has no idea what's causing it. She's just talking. She's like that neighbor that just wants to talk just to make it sound like she knows what's going on. And this actually leads really well into just what is the general problem with which society, because the moment that you see this lady talking about that tells you this problem that Akko's been having in this school isn't just tied to the people inside of this school. It is tied to the whole society at large. And man, believe me, I really want to get madder about this. I want to just lambast this episode. I just want to like light this episode on fire. But the thing is, Trigger is doing something really interesting with the writing. And as long as they continue to have the writing that's going in to kind of say why this is happening, I really can't get mad at them, because at that point, they want people to have this reaction, or they are like planning for this reaction. So there's a little thing that Trigger's been doing in the last couple of episodes, and this is really just a big round of applause to them. At the beginning of the episodes, there's usually little scenes with the three main characters talking. We saw this happen in the episode that involved the Blue Ghost apparition, or the Blue Moon apparition. Specifically that Susie said, or she said a line that foreshadowed to the fact that Akko was going to be running into a ghost. A similar thing happens in this episode, and it is slightly infuriating when you're like watching it, because you can kind of tell that this is a faulty mentality to have. But in the beginning of the episode, when Akko's making such a big deal about helping that ghost and making it happier, we get two very important responses from Susie and Lot. Specifically, Susie saying, why should we care? Why should we even bother? And Lot saying, but you know, it's just tradition. Those two responses characterize exactly what's going on with the majority of the witching world. One is just wanting to follow traditions that are old and don't work, and the second one is just the general air of selfishness and discloseness that the witches promote amongst themselves. And then that lady's statements about the headmistress of Luna Nova are just a testament to that, and the people who surround the headmistress of Luna Nova during the trial where Akko is just helping out the ghost are testaments to the whole thing about the tradition. The episode telegraphs for us in that one moment at the beginning the exact problems that are going on with witch society. And this brings me to my central point. When you have a society that is just blindly following traditions for the sake of traditions, and the next thing is selfish and is asking questions like, why should I bother help someone else? Or why should I bother make something else happy, or relieve something from sorrow? You have a society that's ultimately destined to die. That society needs to burn. It's going to either die out just slowly, which is happening now, or it's just going to blow up. There is no way you can have a society that does not support each other, because that's fundamentally against what society is, or what culture is, or what community is. It needs to work together. People who have no interest in the other person next to them have no right to continue to exist in a way that makes their society or culture live and survive into the future. And that's just the fact of the matter. And this is what the witches are ultimately showing us. Because when you look at this episode, ask yourself, why didn't anyone ever bother to go deal with that ghost if they knew that it was in pain? If they knew that it was sad? If they knew that it was in sorrow? When you look back at Susie's answer, why should I bother? It becomes really self-evident. The witches are selfish. That's just how it goes. And now look. The thing is, that information is very easy to come across. Lot came across that information in the last episode very easily. She just popped open a book. And in this episode, Ursula follows up on that information after Akko talks to her. Now, I was going to rant about Ursula and how her general ineffectiveness, because it took her 3 weeks to get close enough and to find the relic that was kept in Luna Nova. But I'm going to assume that 3 weeks she was spending it just looking for information on that ghost, and she says that she had to do deeper research to find it. Point is though, you could spend 3 weeks after getting the initial lead on finding out how to help that ghost, and then you could spend the 3 weeks, you could go to Luna Nova, which apparently Luna Nova had the answer in its archive the whole time. And again, this is just speaking to Luna Nova has everything. Every solution to every problem that any witch is ever going to have is in Luna Nova, which makes it such a big cultural landmark, I guess. But again, Ursula, it only took her 3 weeks to get to the root of the problem, and it took one student saying, I want to help this person. No witch in the history of Luna Nova ever bothered to even think about what was going on with that ghost. And then you have Luna Nova as the facility having the answer right there the whole time. All it took was just using some general researching, and then a spell that we have seen other people using. Or at least other students using before. That's all it took to find out how you could save this ghost. Witch society needs to die, and it needs to modernize into something better. And when I say modernize, I mean actually bring in people who care about each other. Actually bring in a system that wants to help students, and not have the system that the witches at Luna Nova are currently endorsing. You know, the system that almost expelled Akko. Look, I'm all for strict systems if it produces exceptional people. But one of the big problems with Luna Nova is that it's producing run-of-the-mill people. There's no value in having a system so steeped in tradition if it's not doing anything better than the competing system that's adopting new ideas. So look, when you sit in this episode and you see the teachers who are getting angry, or the teachers who want to stop Akko because she's going against tradition and have to be stopped by the headmistress. When you see a lady who is talking about what could possibly be going wrong with the world, when she should be aware, or we are told she has the ability to be aware, but ultimately she's just shit talking as well. It's just a poisonous society. That's ultimately what it comes down to. It's a poisonous culture. And ultimately, it's that culture that prevails. Because when we look at who wins in this episode, Diana doesn't feel good about this because she saw more value in what Akko had done. But ultimately, let's think very carefully about what was it that disqualified, or what was it that led to Akko's defeat when it came to the whole Moonlit Witch, as according to this episode. It wasn't that her magic was technically faulty. You know, her just shape-shifting magic was just, you know, not to par. You know, because that's a fair assertion. Like, yeah, you know, you did something pretty great there, but it wasn't that impressive. Your magic ability isn't refined enough. No, it's not a reason like that. It's ultimately the reason Akko broke the rules. Her group broke the rules by trying to save a ghost and releasing a princess into the afterlife. And also abolishing what was truthfully a very disturbing kind of right. What leads to Akko's defeat isn't her ability as a witch. It's simply her going against the general procedure for the sake of saving someone who has been in sorrow, someone who has been in pain for hundreds of years. That sucks. Alright, that just flat out sucks. So this episode, you know, I'm very happy when Akko went in there and she did something different. I'm happy to see that. Again, I praise Trigger. I praise them for putting those lines at the beginning with Susie and Lot. Like that, those lines are very indicative of the problem that's going on in the society of the witches. I appreciate Lot standing up to the bullies and standing up to Diana, and Lot just getting kind of, well, actually, you know, I felt really bad for Lot when she was being bullied, or when people said like she has no presence, because I really thought Susie and Akko, yeah, I could see them like having names for them, but then also having a name for Lot, like the poor little girl, man, that sucked. So I was happy that that kicked Lot in the butt, and she could go and actually help Akko out. I'm thankful for Ursula and the headmistress, because really at this point so far, Ursula's been putting in a lot of effort since the last time I ranted about the teachers, and the headmistress, well, she's kind of proving her value here. She's willing to compromise on tradition. The two people who were next to the headmistress might as well kick them out. They have no value in this place anymore. The fish professor, keep her around because she has a flexible mind as well. And I also appreciate seeing what might be the antagonist for this series at the end of the episode. Have no idea what's going on there, but I'm pretty excited for it. Anyway, guys, like I said, this turned into a discussion revolving around witch society and using elements of the episode to argue those points. Let me know what you thought down below. I'm very excited to hear what you guys have to think. And yeah, again, I'm sorry I couldn't talk more about this episode in general, but this is a pretty big theme that's going on in Little Witch Academia. And unfortunately, the narrative demands that we take it seriously. So, guys, that's pretty much it for me. Like, it's really a great episode of Little Witch Academia because Akko gets a victory. And, yeah, a princess gets saved and she is sent away. It's going to be pretty exciting to see the fallout from this episode, and I really do want to see what happens after this. But guys, thanks so much for watching. This week I will be responding to comments because my week is a lot more free. So feel free, put a comment down below. I will respond to it if it's something I can respond to. And yeah, till the next time, thanks for watching.